You just played Elden Ring as your first Souls game and now you're wondering what's next. I know getting in an established franchise can be difficult many times. For example, getting in the Final Fantasy series, which are 15 main games and countless side games, or the Tales franchise, which also expands through 17 titles. However, the Souls franchise is a bit different. There are 7 games and the majority of these are somewhat similar in structure, which will identify with the players that played Elden Ring as their first Souls game, or for those who played some of the Souls games before playing Elden Ring. This is a great moment to get involved in this amazing franchise. Elden Ring is the final product from a developer who has evolved the genre since 2009 with their first Souls game Demon Souls, until the last release before Elden Ring, which was Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. So naturally, all the games before Elden will lack certain features or gameplay options that Elden Ring has. However, all these games are masterfully crafted with their own mechanics in mind, so you will see that even if there aren't as many options like in Elden Ring gameplay wise, the game will feel fresh and unique in its own way. Another plus is that none of its story and the majority of the lore does not overlap on other titles, so there is no danger on playing Dark Souls 2 before Dark Souls 1 as an example. Finally, I want to emphasize that I refer as Souls to the whole franchise, starting in Demon Souls, so Demons, Dark Souls 1, 2 and 3, as well as Sekiro, Elden Ring and Bloodborne. With that out of the way, this is the order on what I think new Souls fans will have the most enjoyment when playing all these games. The first game I think should be the next in mind after Elden Ring is not Dark Souls 1 actually, it's Dark Souls 3. This one is the most similar combat wise to Elden Ring, as well as movement wise, with the exception of the jump of course, which was implemented first in Sekiro, the previous release before Elden Ring, but most importantly the roll mechanic, which is basically the same, and it's a mechanic that it's a priority to learn and understand when playing these games. Also, the combat system is the most similar to Elden Ring, with many of the same weapons and movesets shared between both, including many of the weapon arts, which actually went to Elden Ring as Ashes of War. Their difference being that you cannot change weapon arts in Dark Souls 3. Each weapon comes with its own art, and just as in Elden, it does consume FP to use them. The world map and setting is also similar, sharing the fantasy RPG motif, but this game is more focused on somewhat closed areas, since this is not an open world game. To the contrary, this is one of the most linear games in the series, but don't think this as something bad. All the areas do have their own unique style and were worked with such care that there is rarely a place in the game that feels rushed or incomplete. They are filled with great variety of enemies and events happening in its world, and many of the bosses of this game are up to the caliber of the bosses in Elden Ring 2. This gameplay I am showing is fairly early in the game, since I don't want to spoil further areas, bosses or enemies, because I believe, like in Elden Ring, that the sense of discovery is one of the key aspects of enjoying these games. And believe me, Dark Souls 3 is full with amazing content to discover. Now, Dark Souls 3 was the introduction for many people I personally know, and they got hooked to the series after this one. I know you will find a great follow-up to Elden Ring in this game. There are 2 different paths you can follow after this, but do require at least one different platform for 2 of the games unfortunately, and this being the next game I wanted to include first. Bloodborne. My personal favorite after Elden Ring, a PlayStation 4 game that is not available in any other platform outside of the PS4 and the backwards compatible feature of the PlayStation 5. I think that by this time, being the 3rd game, you can start getting through the catalog of Souls games from Software that are not strictly fantasy games, with Bloodborne being one of the most different setting-wise. Taking place in a Victorian and Gothic city with European influence as its base style for architecture and design, this game still follows the canvas of Dark Souls 3 in many of the movesets of its weapons. However, the roll mechanic was changed for a dash, reminiscent of the Bloodhound step in Elden Ring. Also, the game does feature a mechanic that regenerates health to the player if you counter attacks of an enemy after it hits you, giving the game an opportunity for a more aggressive style instead of the more methodic and strategic combat styles of the Dark Souls games. The horror gothic style of Bloodborne is really the center of attention here, since it did give the developer the opportunity to create some of the most horrific and grotesque enemy variety in the series, as well as locations that feel unique from any other game, not only for From Software but video game worlds in general. The best words I can use to describe this art style is beautifully horrific. Now, as I mentioned before, this is a PlayStation exclusive, which means that there is no space for performance setup. The game runs at 30 FPS in both PS4 and PS5, which is the only thing that really compromises the enjoyment of the game compared to the 60 frames per second and customizable resolution and graphics that all the other games can achieve with more modern hardware on PC. I normally don't buy consoles for just one game, but I think this one is worth the purchase. Also, the game is very cheap, going for $20 on the digital end, and gets on sale a lot too. This one is already on the PS Plus collection on PS5, so you can download it from there without paying for it if you already own the PS Plus subscription. Bloodborne will remain for now as the optional game for those who don't have the PlayStation console to play it. We'll just have to wait for a PC port someday, hopefully. The next in line is the original Dark Souls, the game that placed From Software as one of the best developers in the video game space. Dark Souls feels as fresh and unique today as in 2011 when the game came out. I think that this is one of the games that will stand the pass of time and probably never feel outdated. Yes, it is a bit slower than the other games that came after, and of course it doesn't feature many of the mechanics in the newer titles. But make no mistake, the simplicity of its gameplay is what makes it special. You have enough to feel trapped and just about get through the obstacles that the game throws at you, making this game a bit more difficult than the other Souls. In my opinion, of course. I know many people consider other FromSoft titles more difficult, but that will depend on your playstyle. The game's world is very intricate, with many branching paths that lead you to completely different areas that then circle around and leaves you in the hub area, and you have no idea how you ended up in there. That's part of the magic of Dark Souls 1, and one of the most known design choices that catapulted the game to mainstream. Dark Souls 1 world design is something that none of the other games in the series have gotten quite like it, so understanding and memorizing the level design is key to overcome its challenges, since it doesn't have the transportation between bonfires since the beginning like all the other games in the series have. Many of the inspirations and mechanics that are still in use in future games, including Elden Ring, come directly from Dark Souls 1. Minor things like leveling in the Sites of Grace, formerly known as bonfires, which is actually something that cannot be done in any of the other games without going to the hub area, to the evolution of bosses like the ever-present stone gargoyles in many of the games, just to mention a few. Dark Souls 1 is a must-play for any player that delves into the Souls series. From here onward, there's a choice of two games, Dark Souls 2 and Sekiro. If you want something different with the same FromSoft feel, then Sekiro is the next best option. Starting with Sekiro, this one is the most different game in the From Software catalog since the inception of the Souls genre in Demon Souls. Here most of the RPG elements that are present in all the other games are completely absent, making this title a bit simpler in regards of customization of your character. No weapons, no armor options, no leveling system, only upgrades for your prosthetic arm, which work as skills in the field of battle. Also, your character gains strength and HP when defeating bosses and mini-bosses, so you can say some of the RPG mechanics are still present to an extent. I think of this upgrade path like a Zelda game, where your character gains strength, weapons, HP and experience through the story instead of farming or looting enemies. There is however a chart with abilities that you can unlock for your character, which do require an experience bar to be filled, and this can become essential in battle since it includes many defensive skills from attacks that you will not be able to counter otherwise. And there are many offensive moves too, which makes the game very replayable since many players will not feel all the ability options you can get in the first playthrough. The setting of this game, like Bloodborne, differs from the traditional medieval style, this time going to a feudal Japan, which was crafted beautifully with the architecture of its time recreated to the smaller detail, and do feature level design with big areas and many branching paths with optional content. The enemy design comes with creatures directly from real-life Japanese legends and folklore, as well as beasts or human-type enemies. The variety is simply amazing here. If you have played any of the From Software games before, you'll find a different yet familiar game in Sekiro. I am sure the katana users from Elden Ring will have a great time with this one too. Finally, I wanted to leave the next two games last because of a couple of reasons for each of them, starting with Dark Souls 2. If you ask a From Software fan, or just a Souls fan in general, they will say that Dark Souls 2 is the worst game in the franchise. However, I want to emphasize something. Dark Souls 2 is not a bad game. It is a good game, just not in the caliber of its counterparts in the Souls franchise. Please don't skip this one. It has its own personality and it's worth a playthrough at least once. This was the first game that featured transportation between bonfires since the beginning of the game, and was the first to give the option to the player to power stance 2 weapons of the same class, which is something featured in Elden Ring 2, although not as refined here of course. The gameplay mechanics of this game are basically the same from Dark Souls 1, but slower in some animations. Not as good to be honest, but overall serviceable. The map design is good, but again it does suffer from the very linear style of the other games. You do have a choice sometimes, specifically in Majula, the hub area of the game, to go to a couple different levels, but most of these have a dead end when you beat the main boss, and then you need to go back to Majula and go somewhere else to repeat this process. There are a couple of exceptions of course, which are very much needed, but in the end this is a downgrade from the intricate and labyrinthian design of Dark Souls 1 levels. With that being said, the art style of this game is fantastic. Every place feels unique and gives an atmosphere that is not present in any other game. The enemy variety is good, but I do feel that the variety gets a bit lost in the latter portion of the game, throwing many of the same enemies in bulk to the player. If you choose to play this game, which I do recommend, get the Scholar of the First Tin edition, which features all the DLC areas that can be considered even better than the base game. Give it a try. I know you will have a good time with this one too. Finally, there's only one game left. I left this one last because, like Bloodborne, it does require a console to play it. The game that started it all, not Dark Souls, but Demon Souls, released in 2009 for the PlayStation 3. The first game in the Soul series, which is actually very similar to Dark Souls 1 with its very dark art style and graphic design. This game has a very eerie and thick atmosphere that none of the other games have, including Bloodborne with its gothic style. Gameplay is basically the same from Dark Souls 1, but tends to feel a bit more floaty. It's not as sharp. However, this is minor, honestly, many people will not notice this. There aren't as many options in magic or miracles as in the other games, and it's clear as day which ones are good and which ones are bad. Weaponry is overall basic compared to the future releases, but there are options for everyone, from daggers, small swords, great swords, and ultra great swords, known as colossal swords in Elden Ring, as well as the previously mentioned magics and miracles. So the options are there, but understandably not as much as the other ones. Even if the levels are linear in nature, there are tons of secrets to discover. Also with many NPCs and items behind the world tendency system, which is quite difficult to understand when you first played this game. I do recommend searching more of these mechanics on YouTube or Google, since the game doesn't really explain it very well, to be completely honest. The bosses of the game are amazing too, and some of them are very difficult. However, many do have an outdated AI that can be somewhat noticeable if you play the other games. But even then, they are very well designed and do require good understanding of their moveset to beat them. This game is completely worth your time, but please play this knowing that this was the first of its kind. That's key to really enjoy this game. Demon Souls did stand the pass of time. It even got a remake recently on the PlayStation 5 as an exclusive game, which addresses many of the problems the original version had, like teleporting between archstones, which are the equivalent of sites of grace or bonfires in the same area, items over inventory burden being sent to the NPC that saves them, faster load times, and even running up ladders, which was painfully slow in the original. The graphics update done to this game in this new version is night and day compared to the original. It's still, for me at least, the best looking game in the system, and one of the best games released for the PlayStation 5. That being said, that's the main problem with Demon Souls. I say that the original still holds up, so it's always a good option. Just don't expect many of the quality of life updates from the later games or the remake version. I actually played Demon Souls on PS3 last year for the first time, and I actually had a great time with it. Then I played the remake version some months later, and it was better of course, but that's how I realized that the PlayStation 3 version is still great and worth playing too. And well, if you were able to play Elden Ring on PC with decent performance and graphics, you can play this game in a PlayStation 3 emulator too. Now to summarize, you beat Elden Ring and want more. This is the best order in which you can play these games in my opinion. If you exclusively play on PC, then you can play in this order: Elden Ring, Dark Souls 3, Dark Souls 1, Sekiro, Dark Souls 2, and Demon Souls, the original version, if you want to emulate it of course. Then if you play on console only, you can play Elden Ring, Dark Souls 3, Dark Souls 1, Bloodborne if you have a PlayStation 4, Sekiro, Dark Souls 2, and Demon Souls if you have either a PlayStation 3 or a PlayStation 5. I think that's the order in which new fans of the Souls games will get the most enjoyment, and this is coming from a long-time Souls fan. I hope you liked this video. Please let me know in the comments if Elden Ring was your first Souls game and if you think you'll play the other ones or just wait for the next release. Thank you very much for your time. I'll talk to you in the next one.